You are an ancient human baby. You cannot run, you cannot hide, you cannot even hold your own head steady for long, and the world around you is full of things that can kill you before sunset. There are no walls, no locks, no antibiotics, no clean tap water, no diapers, no formula, no sterilized bottles, no glowing baby monitor in the corner. There is wind, heat, cold, smoke, insects, hard ground, sharp stone, dirty hands, contaminated water, and animals with excellent hearing. You are, in practical terms, an absurd creature to build a species around. And yet it worked. It worked again and again and again, across so many generations that one unbroken line of those impossible babies became you. So this is not an abstract question. It is family history at its most brutal and most intimate. How did ancient human babies survive? They survived because humans built a system around them. Not a gadget, not a rulebook. A system of bodies, attention, milk, fire, memory, and shared labor. Human beings did not leave infant survival to one exhausted mother if they could possibly help it. They turned it into a group project, and that decision changed our species. To understand why ancient babies needed so much help, you have to start with the basic problem of being human. Human newborns are helpless in a way that borders on ridiculous. A foal stands within hours. A newborn antelope is almost immediately drafted into a chase scene. Even chimpanzee infants, fragile as they are, arrive better prepared to cling and coordinate. Human babies show up with giant needs and almost no capacity to meet them. That is the price of becoming the animal that makes tools, masters fire, builds traps, tells stories, and eventually invents cities. Our species evolved large brains, upright walking, and a pelvis that has to balance childbirth against efficient movement. Those things do not fit together neatly. So evolution solved the problem in the harshest workable way. Human babies are born early and finish a huge amount of development outside the womb. Infancy is not just the period after birth. For humans, infancy is a second gestation moved into the social world. At birth, the human brain is only a fraction of its adult size. The wiring continues outside. Immune development continues outside. Temperature control, motor coordination, sleep regulation, and social attachment all continue outside. Other mammals hide more of that construction project inside the mother's body. Humans push it into the open and assign the rest of the work to other humans. That is the central fact. An ancient baby could not be left alone because, in evolutionary terms, there was no safe alone. Alone meant too cold or too hot. Alone meant no one to notice if breathing changed or feeding failed. Alone meant exposure, silence at the wrong moment, or crying at the wrong moment. Alone meant being easy to miss and easy to lose. So ancient humans solved the problem the same way they solved many others. They stayed close, extremely close. The ancestral human baby was carried for most of the day. Not sometimes, not for convenience, not only when crying started, most of the day. The alternative barely makes sense. Imagine crossing rough ground while gathering roots, collecting shellfish, digging tubers, watching for snakes, tending a fire, processing food, or moving camp. Where does the baby go? There is no stroller. There is no clean blanket spread across a polished floor. There is no safe room. There is one body carrying another body across a dangerous landscape. So babies rode in arms, on hips, against chests, on backs, inside slings made of hide, bark fiber, woven plant material, or whatever else the group could build. Constant contact was not a style of parenting. It was standard operating procedure, and that contact did several jobs at once. It kept the baby warm. It stabilized breathing. It reduced crying. It made feeding easy. It protected against falls, insects, and predators. It also locked the infant into the rhythm of an adult life. Walking, resting, talking, working, turning, waking, and sleeping. Ancient babies did not observe family life from the sidelines. They were attached directly to it. This matters because a human infant is not simply weak, it is unfinished. Newborn temperature regulation is poor. Stress regulation is poor. Sleep is fragmented. Feeding has to happen often because the stomach is tiny and the brain is expensive. Human babies burn through energy at an astonishing rate. Their bodies need constant support because they are running a massive developmental construction site on very limited fuel. Modern skin-to-skin research confirms what ancient humans knew through daily experience. Babies held close regulate better. Their heart rates are steadier. Their temperature is steadier. They cry less. They feed more effectively. Their bodies settle because close contact is the environment they were built to expect. Even the infant body tells the story. Newborns grasp. They root. They orient toward voices, smell, movement, and skin. A carried baby is not being spoiled. A carried baby is being placed in its proper habitat. And if carrying solved the problem of the day, sleeping solved the problem of the night. Ancient babies did not go into a separate room. They did not get placed in a crib at the edge of the house while adults tried to reclaim an evening that did not exist. They slept pressed against somebody. Across hunter-gatherer societies and traditional communities worldwide, infants and small children sleep in direct contact with adults. That pattern is widespread because it matches human biology. A nearby adult provides warmth, quick access to milk, rapid response to distress, and constant sensory input through breathing, movement, smell, and touch. In the ancestral world, nighttime separation was a dangerous idea. Picture a dark camp after sunset. No nightlight, no thermostat, no white noise machine. The fire burns low. Beyond it is darkness in every direction. The baby sleeps there too, not alone, but inside a cluster of bodies. A mother close enough to feel a movement. A grandmother close enough to hear a change in breathing. A sibling close enough to wake if the baby stirs. This was not sentiment, it was efficiency. Close sleep also helped keep milk flowing. A nearby infant nurses often. Frequent nursing supports supply, calms distress fast, and spaces births naturally. It also prevents a baby from wasting precious energy screaming for food while the food source sleeps 10 feet away. Then there is the food itself. For the first phase of life, the answer was milk, a lot of it. Very often. Ancient breastfeeding did not run on neat schedules. It was frequent, flexible, and prolonged. Human milk is excellent fuel, but human babies are designed to take it in small, repeated doses. They feed, pause, drift, wake, feed again, complain, settle, and feed again. In a world of constant carrying and close sleep, that pattern works beautifully because the infant is always within reach. This shaped family life far beyond infancy. Frequent breastfeeding suppresses ovulation and naturally spaces births. In foraging societies, children are often separated by several years, and that spacing fits the realities of a species that has to carry its young. A woman cannot efficiently move through a demanding landscape while nursing one infant, carrying another, and repeating the process every year. Human reproduction, in its ancestral form, ran slower, and babies survived better because of it. Milk was also not always limited to a single mother and a single child. In many societies, it was shared. Sisters could nurse, aunts could nurse, unrelated women could nurse. A woman with milk could become the difference between life and death for a sick child, an orphan, or the baby of an exhausted mother. That detail matters because it points to the deepest truth in this entire story. Ancient human babies survived because they had more than one lifeline. Humans are cooperative breeders. The term sounds technical, but the idea is simple. Mothers did not carry the full burden alone, and our species flourished because they did not have to. In many mammals, and even many primates, care falls overwhelmingly on the mother. Humans broke that pattern open. Fathers held babies. Grandmothers gathered food and watched toddlers. Older siblings carried infants, entertained children, and acted as early apprentices in caregiving. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and unrelated camp members formed a ring of extra hands and extra eyes around every child. That social arrangement changed everything. If a mother gathered food, somebody else held the baby. If she was sick, another lactating woman could feed the child. If danger appeared, multiple adults responded. If one caregiver was injured or died, the child still had a chance because the system had backup built into it. Redundancy is one of the greatest survival technologies humans ever invented. It is not glamorous, it does not leave behind shiny artifacts, but it keeps children alive. If one adult is exhausted, another steps in. If one person has no food, another shares. If one pair of arms is busy, another pair becomes available. A fragile infant survives better in a system where no single person is the sole point of failure. And once you see that, one of the strangest features of our species starts to make perfect sense. Grandmothers. Human females often live decades beyond their reproductive years. In the animal kingdom, that is unusual. In human life, it is enormously useful. A postmenopausal grandmother brings experience, labor, vigilance, and knowledge without the demands of a newborn of her own. She can gather, soothe, teach, carry, intervene, and free younger mothers to recover or work. She has accumulated survival skill in human form. That is why anthropologists put so much weight on the grandmother hypothesis. Grandmothers are not side characters in human evolution. They are structural supports. A grandmother who brings food, watches a toddler, recognizes illness early, or calms a screaming infant changes the odds of survival. Multiply that across generations and you get more surviving children, more experienced adults, and more future grandparents feeding strength back into the system. Fathers mattered too. Modern stereotypes often flatten ancient fatherhood into provisioning alone, but that picture is too small. In many hunter-gatherer societies, men stay physically close to infants, hold them, calm them, protect them, transport them, and share in the daily work of keeping them alive. Human fatherhood is unusually involved by primate standards because human babies are unusually demanding by primate standards. A baby that needs this much care draws in everyone available. Ancient babies were not only fed and carried, they were watched. That sounds modern, but the behavior is ancient. A baby in a foraging camp is almost never truly unwatched. Someone notices whether it latched. Someone notices if the crying sounds wrong. Someone notices a limp body, a hot forehead, a rash, diarrhea, strange stillness, weak sucking, or labored breathing. Ancient people did not need microscopes to know when a baby looked bad. Human beings are astonishingly good at reading one another, and in small groups that skill becomes life-saving. A child embedded in camp life is heard, smelled, touched, rocked, shifted, checked, and responded to across the day by multiple people. Trouble has many chances to be noticed because the baby is almost never off stage. That same close attention shaped the transition to solid food. Eventually, milk is not enough. A growing child needs more calories, more textures, more nutrients, and ancient humans had no blenders, no squeeze pouches, and no toddler snack aisle. What they had was ingenuity, practiced hands, and a willingness to turn adult food into baby food by any means available. One of the oldest methods is pre-mastication. An adult chews food and passes the softened material to the child. To modern ears, it sounds unpleasant. In practical terms, it worked. It transformed tough foods into swallowable foods. It bridged the awkward stage between milk and chewing. It let adults transfer calories from the group diet into a baby who lacked the teeth and jaw strength to process those foods independently. Alongside that came soft foods already suited to children: fruit pulp, eggs, marrow, fish, tender meat, mashed plant foods. Hunter-gatherer diets were often broad and flexible, and children were gradually introduced to that diversity. Bone marrow mattered especially. It is calorie-dense, fat-rich, nutrient-packed, and easy to consume. For a growing child in a physically demanding world, that is premium fuel. And children did not enter this food world suddenly. They absorbed it first by watching. Human infants are obsessive observers. They stare at hands, mouths, faces, tools, fire, and movement. A baby carried through daily life spends hours inches away from food preparation. It sees grinding, pounding, slicing, roasting, peeling, cracking, chewing, and sharing. Long before it can participate, it is already learning what counts as food and how humans transform the landscape into a meal. Cooking made this stage of childhood dramatically safer and easier. Once humans controlled fire reliably, babies gained access to softer, warmer, more digestible food. Cooking breaks down fibers, tenderizes meat, kills many pathogens, and expands the range of things small children can consume. Fire did not just feed adults better. It made infant and child survival more likely. A cooked root is easier on a child than a raw one. A softened piece of meat nourishes instead of choking. Warmth near a controlled fire can carry a baby through a cold night that might otherwise end the story. The campfire was not just a source of heat. It was kitchen, nursery, social center, insect defense, and nighttime security system all at once. It also changed the structure of evenings. Light extended social time. Adults lingered. Hands could groom, mend, massage, delouse, inspect skin, pass infants from arm to arm, and respond quickly when a baby stirred. Fire created a zone of warmth, visibility, and attention, and babies benefited from every part of it. Of course, none of this made childhood safe. Ancient babies still died in terrible numbers. Infection killed them. Diarrhea killed them. Birth injuries killed them. Starvation killed them. Exposure, parasites, congenital disorders, accidents, smoke, dehydration, and hard seasons killed them. Ancient people did not defeat infant mortality. They battled it constantly with the tools they had. That matters because it is easy to turn closeness and community into a fantasy about a gentler past. The ancient system was effective, but it was unforgiving. A huge number of children were buried. Every surviving adult knew loss directly. Every group knew what it meant for a mother to wake with empty arms. What ancient people did have was practical knowledge built through repetition across generations. They knew how to keep a baby warm. They knew which mothers needed more food and rest to keep milk flowing. They knew which plants soothed pain, eased stomach trouble, or reduced fever. They knew that some waters were dangerous, some seasons were harsher, some camps were safer, and some signs in an infant demanded immediate action. Traditional medicine came from accumulated observation. Willow bark eased pain, honey protected wounds, smoke drove off insects, fats, fibers, clays, herbs, ashes, and plant extracts were used in specific ways for specific problems. Not every remedy was good, but many were grounded in long practical experience. Ancient childcare was never pure instinct. It was applied knowledge. Birth itself belonged to that knowledge. Human labor is difficult, risky, and mechanically awkward. A woman giving birth alone faces a crisis with very little margin for error. Human groups responded by turning birth into assisted labor. Experienced women knew positions, timing, cord care, warming, cleaning, and the urgency of the first feed. Skilled help at birth improved the odds for mother and child, and groups that preserved that expertise outperformed groups that did not. Ritual mattered here too. Birth and infancy sit inside ritual in nearly every human culture because these are the moments when life is most fragile and most valuable. Naming ceremonies existed, protective charms existed, postpartum seclusion existed, special songs, body paint, blessings, taboos, and rules about who handled the infant existed too. From the outside, those can look decorative. In practice, they organized attention. A ritual says this child matters, this mother matters, this moment belongs to all of us. That has practical consequences. It draws helpers in, it directs labor, it marks responsibility publicly. If a mother is secluded after birth, somebody must bring food. If a child is named before the group has formally acknowledged its place and its claims on communal care. Ritual is social engineering dressed in sacred language. Songs deserve their own place in this story. Human infants are intensely responsive to voice. Lullabies appear everywhere because they work. Rhythm regulates, repetition calms. Familiar voices anchor attention and lower stress. A song around a fire is not decoration. It is a tool for settling a nervous system that arrives unfinished and easily overwhelmed. And when babies died, ancient people mourned them. The archaeological record leaves no doubt. Infant burials were often careful, deliberate, and tender. Small bodies were placed gently. Some were buried with shells, beads, ochre, flowers, or other offerings. That is not emotional distance. That is grief made visible. There is a persistent idea that high infant mortality must have made parents detached. The evidence points the other way. When survival is uncertain, care becomes more urgent, not less. Ancient parents, siblings, fathers, and grandparents knew exactly how fragile babies were. That is why they organized so much of life around protecting them. By now, the pattern is unmistakable. Ancient babies survived through constant contact, frequent feeding, close sleep, shared caregiving, softened food, fire, practical knowledge, ritualized support, and relentless social attention. None of those pieces worked alone. Together, they formed a survival system. And that system tells you something profound about what humans are. Human childhood is long because human learning is long. Human babies are born unfinished because human brains require enormous development after birth. Human families are social because one pair of hands is not enough. The helpless infant and the cooperative group are not separate facts. They are two halves of the same design. Ancient babies survived because helplessness forced humans to become specialists in one another. That pressure shaped the species. It explains why we are so responsive to crying, so good at reading faces, so dependent on teaching, so invested in grandparents, so willing to bond with non-parent caregivers, and so unusually tolerant of a very long childhood. The baby did not simply adapt to human society. Human society adapted to the baby. It also explains why modern parents so often feel overwhelmed. Remove the extended family, scatter relatives across cities or continents, reduce childcare to 1 or 2 exhausted adults, treat dependence like weakness, schedule feeding around work, privatize sleep, turn help into a service purchased by the hour. Then raising a human infant starts to feel impossibly hard. That feeling is not a personal flaw. It is what happens when a biological system built for shared care gets dropped into a social structure that strips out the sharing. Modern medicine is one of the great triumphs of our species. Vaccines save children. Sanitation saves children. Antibiotics save children. Neonatal care saves children. Obstetrics saves children. Nutritional science saves children. On the medical front, we have done something extraordinary. But socially, ancient humans understood a rule we still keep rediscovering. No single adult was meant to be the entire world for a baby. The world was supposed to be a group. That group produced warmth, milk, backup, vigilance, relief, teaching, and continuity. It gave mothers room to recover. It gave fathers clear importance. It turned older children into useful helpers and elders into living infrastructure. It reduced the chance that one illness, one death, one mistake, or one exhausted night would erase a child from the future. It also did something harder to measure and just as important. It surrounded the infant with minds. Human development is social from the start. A baby passed among trusted people hears more voices, sees more faces, tracks more expressions, and enters the world of language long before it can speak. Ancient childcare was not just a system for surviving the first year, it was a system for building a human nervous system. And that is why these astonishingly impractical little creatures kept making it. They were surrounded by arms, surrounded by milk, surrounded by eyes watching, fires burning, food softening, hands adjusting, voices soothing, and adults who had done this before. Ancient baby survival did not depend on a single secret herb, a prehistoric trick, or some forgotten miracle technique. It depended on a social fact so basic that modern life often hides it from view. Humans kept babies alive by refusing to let them drift beyond human reach. That started at birth. Midwives, mothers, sisters, grandmothers, experienced women, and sometimes nearby men all had roles in warming the child, clearing the airway, positioning mother and baby, handling the cord, and securing the first feed. A difficult birth could kill both mother and infant. Skilled helpers improved the odds. Then the baby entered a world saturated with contact, held through the day, fed through the night, passed between trusted adults, carried through work, slept in warmth, given softened food, watched constantly, drawn into the pulse of camp life before it could speak a word. By the time that child could walk, it was already deeply social. By the time it could talk, it was already learning from multiple generations. By the time it could help, it was already stepping into the same network that had carried it. That is the real answer. Ancient human babies survived because they were never just one woman's problem. They were everyone's business. And across thousands of generations, that fact shaped nearly everything human. It shaped our empathy, our communication, our long childhood, our pair bonds, our grandparenthood, our cooperation, and the size of the circles we call family. So when you imagine an ancient baby, do not picture a tiny lone figure somehow surviving by toughness in a hostile wilderness. Picture a child wrapped in skin, smoke, warmth, and watchfulness, asleep against a mother while other adults speak beside the fire and the whole group forms a living wall against the dark. It survives because nobody lets it go.